Mind If We Talk is produced in partnership with the Iowa Mental Health Counselors Association Foundation and Ramona Wink. This program is brought to you in part by Next Right Treatment Services, St. Gregory Recovery Center, and 100 Plus Women Who Care. The content of this show does not necessarily reflect the views of the IMHCA Foundation. The IMHCA Foundation is not liable for the content of this show.
Welcome to Mind If We Talk, a program that covers mental health issues and services available in our community. Millions of Americans are affected by mental health conditions. Perhaps you or someone close to you is suffering in silence. Often we try to address these challenges alone, and we don't recognize when it's time to reach out for help. Throughout this program series, we'll introduce you to services available and how to take that first step towards healing. Next Right Treatment Services understands the difficulties involved in addiction recovery. We spoke with Robin Moeller, the director of Next Right Treatment Services, about the variety of services that they offer. We also spoke to Stephen about his own personal experience. Mike also told us about his drug addiction, his prison time, and his journey to changing his behavior and his outlook on life.
Next Right Treatment Services is all about helping people make the next right choice, the next right decision, and then the next right behavior to overcome their addictions and live a healthier, sober lifestyle. We do OWI evaluations, substance abuse evaluations, outpatient treatment, referrals to residential treatment, reporting to the courts and probation officers. Pretty well full service for the population that's gotten in trouble with the law for their addictions. The red flags that someone might have an issue with addiction or needs some help with treatment is that it's interfering with their life, it's interfering with their job, their relationships, school if they're a student, and if other people are saying to the person, you act differently when you're drinking or using whatever. You're not a nice person when you're doing that. Then we need to listen to them and seek help. At Next Right Treatment Services, a typical group would probably sound like a party to anyone from outside. We do joke around a lot. We do learn to laugh at ourselves for things that we've done in our past, and we also learn about coping skills for all kinds of life's twists and turns that get thrown at us at any given time.
Before I entered treatment, I want to say about 6 years ago, I was heavily into marijuana. I smoked it on a daily basis, several times a day, didn't matter. And it was just a routine. It came to me every day, morning, evening, afternoon. I was busted. I was going to a party in Atlantic and I had marijuana with me. I was drinking. I hit a bridge. I totaled my truck. I went to jail for 2 days. I was bonded out. I was put on probation for a year. And then I had to go to substance abuse treatment. I figured I could just tell my story and say what I wanted to say and get it done and over with and complete the class and be done with it. So that's what I did, and then I served my probation for a year and I completed it. After that, it was probably about 2 years later, I had gotten involved in meth, still smoking marijuana. I was low man on the totem pole and worked my way up to being a drug dealer. I threw a party at my own apartment. I always hid it from my wife that I was never smoking meth, but always doing marijuana. My kids were upstairs in their room. My dad was living with me at the time and shared a room with my son. I thought I was untouchable. Turned around and had a knock on my door and I was getting raided. A lot of police showed up. Guns were pointed at me. They seen I had meth and marijuana on the coffee table. I had my scales, I had baggies out, pipes for smoking meth and marijuana. And then I had a reality shock of I'm busted and the game's over, and I didn't know what my consequences were going to be. I was then entered into having DHS in my life. I was removed from my home for over a year. I figured that I was just going to be a plain jerk to DHS and tell them to screw off. I wasn't going to comply with them. That wasn't working, and I wasn't having the visits I wanted with my kids.
All I knew was addiction, the lifestyle, the people. I kept going back to the same rural area I came from, the same friends, the same playgrounds, everything. Within a year, 18 months, I'd be using again. My famous line when somebody called me for drugs would be, they'd ask me what I was doing. I'd tell them I was just sitting around waiting for my next prison sentence. You know, a sad lifestyle, a sad existence, but it's the only one I knew. 2013, I was weeks, if not days, away from suicide. I'd been planning for months and months, and I got indicted to the federal government. I got sent to federal prison. I was doing a lot of years. I turned 50 years old in prison, and I didn't want it no more. I was just sick of it, tired of it. Within the first 6 months of being in federal prison, no one answered my phone calls no more. No one wrote. So I just started seeing the whole other side of people and my lifestyle I was living. I knew I was worth more than that. I went through a behavioral modification program there, a year-long program, a lot of cognitive thinking. Because of my lifestyle and everything, I was programmed only one way, how to live life, one way how I view things, view people. So it helped kind of reprogramming.
The most rewarding thing for me at Next Right Treatment Services is when I see people make positive changes in their life. They're required to write a graduation statement when they complete the program, which I usually put on my Facebook page with a picture that depicts how I see they've changed. They just describe what they learned in the program and how it's changed their lives, that they're moving on to the goals that they have for their own life.
I'm happy Robin does what she does, because when I had to do substance abuse again, I seeked for Robin, and she's a great woman. She's great at what she does, and she really does change people's lives. If you really want your life changed, it's all about doing it yourself. So I woke up and manned up and decided that I needed to change my life, and I needed to be a man instead of thinking I'm a drug dealer and I'm untouchable. Anybody can be caught. It's just a matter of time.
My life today is so great. I'm spending time with my 80-some-year-old parents weekly. That's something I was missing in action for 22 years. I mean, they didn't know if I was dead or alive half the time. I've been out 7 years. I got over a $20 plus an hour job, my own place, new car. I actually have the tools to handle life when life comes at me on life's terms. I used to just run from everything. I answer every phone call I get now. I answer. I don't have to hide from nobody.
After going through Robin's treatment, I graduated, and shortly after, DHS was out of my life, and I now have my kids back in my life full time, and I'm a full-time stay-at-home father, and I'm clean and sober.
If anybody out there struggling with addiction and they think they're not worth it, look around, look at their family, look at the lifestyle they're living. You're worth so much more than that. There's so much more to life than being caught up in the same old addiction, the same old lifestyle, the same old BS friends. Just value yourself.
I want people at home to know that substance abuse is not your fault. It is not a choice. It is a disease, and we can treat it. At Next Right Treatment Services, we are non-judgmental. We are working on trying to end the stigma of substance abuse disorder, and we're here to help you.
The connection to nature can be very therapeutic for your mental health. Developing a connection to the outdoors can actually help with positive thinking, as well as reduce anxiety and depression symptoms. We spoke with certified forest therapy guide Joseph about the benefits that forest therapy has to offer.
A forest therapy walk entails going out to a park or a natural area where you would connect with nature, and there's a guide that would lead the group. We use a sequence of invitations. We have an introduction and that sort of thing, and then we do something called the pleasures of presence, where it's a mindfulness-based sensory immersion, where we're just using our senses to get into the here and now in this place. And then we just continue on with a whole series of invitations where we interact with nature, but in between each one, the group has a time to share with one another their experience. So you're not only getting a nature connection, but you're getting a social connection, because we as human beings are connected to nature in ways that we kind of forget at times. And so it's the experience to go out and reconnect with nature. The mental health benefits of taking a forest therapy walk, there are quite a few. It's good for overall well-being and your peace of mind. It helps with symptoms of anxiety and depression, and with ADHD symptoms. It helps with creativity and positive thinking and those types of things. And there's also many physical health benefits, because it helps lower your heart rate and your blood pressure, helps with cortisol levels in the body. And there's even a benefit from the trees. Trees actually give off a substance called a phytoncide, which interacts with the immune systems of our bodies and helps us stay healthy. Just about anybody can sign up for a forest therapy walk. I generally do walks for people who are 12 and older. Other guides may do walks for children in the state of Iowa, so you just have to check with that particular guide. It's even possible to do a forest therapy walk for someone in a wheelchair. So you just have to find the right setting and the right types of invitations and plan the walk accordingly. The typical cost for a forest therapy walk with the county conservation boards that I've been partnering with is somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 to $20. So it's not like it's real expensive or cost prohibitive in any way. Like if you would compare that to a typical mental health counseling session, it's a bargain, because mental health can be somewhere in the neighborhood of $75 to $100 an hour. The slogan for the association I'm with is, "The forest is the therapist, the guide just opens the doors."
The first step to recovery from substance abuse is admitting that you have a problem. That's when the real work begins. And having a program that works for you is crucial. We spoke to Nick and Brittany about the residential program offered at St. Gregory Recovery Centers.
St. Gregory's, we help with addiction from a standpoint of, whether it be drugs, alcohol, we can handle a lot of those different substances. Part of what makes us different in the fact that we can handle those substances is the fact that we really don't focus on the substance, we focus on the individual. It's a matter of helping that individual find purpose and meaning in their life, and really helping them gain the courage to take those steps in a positive direction. So when people come to St. Gregory's, they stay with us for average length of stay is probably 35 days, where they're going to experience, outings with community service. They're going to experience group therapy, individualized therapy, or individual sessions, health and wellness. We actually are one of the only facilities in the state that has our own rec center, where we have a basketball court, volleyball court, a sauna, a weight room and cardio room, that we do structured exercise and gym sessions 7 days a week, because it's really not about just the substance itself. It's about introducing new healthy habits.
First of all, it helps get all the junk out of their system, starts to clear their mind, but everybody's body is geared towards health. And it's when we're stuck in addiction and bad habits, it's like we're fighting against ourselves to be healthy. And so when we start doing just small little practices like that, we start to work with our body towards health, and we start to feel better. It starts to get our brain going, get our heart going. Things look and feel more optimistic. And so that's the physical part of it. The mental part of it, the cognitive behavioral therapy groups that we have are based on life skills. So, and looking inside of ourselves to find what it is that we need, because oftentimes we already possess it. We just don't know how to access it. Like visualization. And people with substance abuse or alcohol issues have vision. They do. They can be really, really the most creative people ever. because they know how to get what they want. And if we can use those tools that they already possess to achieve better things, just shift the focus. You know, you are so good at so many things. And then how do I execute that? What are things that you might run into a problem? We hope you run into a problem when you're with us. Great, how do we solve it? Open up our little life skills books.
Coming to St. Gregory's is going to be a much different experience than probably what you've experienced in other places. Just the atmosphere itself, we're in a non-hospital setting, so we, like right now, with it being about 5 degrees outside, we have the fireplace going, and we want it to be a very home-like, very warm environment where people can come in and the first thing they feel is the difference in our environment. Our staff is very compassionate and very welcoming. We're not looking at you or the individual as somebody who struggles with substances. We're looking at them as an individual, as a son, a daughter, a father, mother, a brother. We're not focused on how many attempts it took, how many tries they've had. It's really about where they are now in the journey and taking the things that maybe they learned in the past at maybe other treatment centers or just through different experiences. And we want to build on that. People, when they start a road trip from, LA to New York, and you get a flat tire in Des Moines, Iowa, you don't have to start back in LA, right? We want to get you to a place where, you can take those things that you've experienced and maybe things that have been helpful for you in the past and really reinforce some of those things and then add new pieces to it to be able to help with the overall success in life and in sobriety. One of the most important aspects of going through a program like ours is that transition home. So one of the things that we've done is we have a recovery life coach that does follow-up calls with the individual, so that way when they go home, we're going to remind that person of the plan that they created, that would help them be successful, that would help them stay on track and really take those principles that we've talked about as far as the virtues and the values and things and putting that stuff into action. So our recovery life coach will do follow-up calls up to a year to really help that person stay accountable with the plan that they've created.
What I want people to know is that I too have struggled with addiction for over a decade, and that you don't have to live a perfect life, but you can live your best life. And we help provide people with the tools and the means to do that. Just call and talk to us, You don't have to say yes, but at least find out if it could be the answer. And if not us, one of the other places that are available in Des Moines. If you need help, you know that you need help. Call somebody. What we want is just for everybody to get better, for everybody to have access to the resources that will give them the best life.
Senior Life Solutions is committed to providing quality mental health care to seniors in rural communities in Iowa through their partnerships with local rural hospitals. This helps reduce the stigma associated with mental health.
Well, I've got my little disabilities that slow me down. Just like I have to hire somebody to shovel my snow, take care of my trees. This past year, I had to have help with gardening.
Marge, when you visit with your friends, is there a stigma around mental health?
With some of my friends, yes. I think working with it, I don't feel I have that. Although with depression, you tend to hide it. You're not going to let anybody know because it's a weakness. And you don't want people to look at you and think you're weak. I know this one friend in church, when she lost her license, I don't think she felt she was depressed, but she wasn't coming to church. She, just little things, kind of isolated herself more. Well, I feel like I've got some advantages that others haven't, as far as I'm still driving. I find that looking for somebody to help me is one of the biggest jobs.
Depression is absolutely the #1 problem we see, followed by anxiety, followed by relationship problems, followed by grief, and followed by a post-traumatic stress disorder or trauma.
It's not for sissies. My husband always said that. It's not for sissies. It's especially when you lose your mate. Then you find you've got to do things you've never done before. I had not done taxes. I had a car.
The age range of who we would serve would be anyone that is probably in the 65 or older range. We have had people in their 90s in our program. The male-female ratio, I would say, would be that I would say about 70% of our participants are female and then 30% male. It's interesting, though, there's a difference in accessing services. Again, the independent factor or independence factor of people in rural America, especially it appears men tend to be much more reluctant identifying their depression, so they are much more reluctant to come into services. And once they do, though, again, the walls tend to fall. We generally see people progress in their outcomes generally by 35 to 40% decrease in depressed symptoms over a general 6-month stay.
Lola, what are some of the biggest differences between living in the city and living in the country on the farm?
Well, it's the isolation of you can't see other houses around you, but after a while you grow to enjoy the being there on your own. Sometimes it's hard to get services, but I have very good neighbors, and they have, during all the snows, they've shoveled me out many, many times, so I appreciate that. I feel helpless, I have in the past, in times of emergency, like when we had a hailstorm and it took out the windows and in the house, or like when the heavy snows and the big ridge thrown up and not being able to get out to the road. So I deal with that by counting on other people, asking them to help me, and they have always come through.
You mentioned, Lola, the importance of relationships. How do relationships help you stay positive?
It does help. It helps to keep me balanced, and if something's particularly bothering me, I can talk to one of my kids about it. My friendships, that's important. That's important too. I have belonged to several different groups. I've always been active in the library, and church, of course, is important. And then coffee time friends, and the friends locally make a big difference.
How important, Lola, is it to build those relationships and have those in place before a crisis or an emergency happens?
It is important to have the relationships already formed. They make it possible for me to live in the country, and I like living in the country now. I like the beauty of it. I like the peace of it. My home is convenient. I have an all-wheel drive car, so I have the best of both worlds.
This kind of service of intensive outpatient is very needed in these communities because if we don't provide them, they don't seem to be provided these kind of services. If a person would want these services and they're not in the small community, then they may have to travel an hour and a half to get there, and they're just not going to do this because they're senior citizens, oftentimes 75, 80 years old, and they're just not going to drive an hour and a half to get these services. If they don't get these services, there's a downward spiral that can occur, and they become more and more depressed, oftentimes to a point of having to be placed inpatient in a hospital, which we want to avoid for humanitarian reasons, if anything else. So I would say that's the reason that we are needed in Iowa.
If you or someone you know is facing a mental health crisis, please call 911. To utilize one of the many resources discussed in this program, we invite you to visit our sponsor's website. The Iowa Mental Health Counselors Association Foundation and 100 plus women who care are the proud sponsors for this program of Mind If We Talk. Thank you for watching. I'm Ramona Wink.